The sting of her palm still burns across my cheek, even as I stand frozen in my own living room. My daughter-in-law, Kathy, had just slapped me hard while my son Daniel watched in stunned silence. Her eyes blazed with something I had never seen before. Not anger alone, but entitlement, hunger, and an icy cruelty that cut deeper than her hand ever could. She leaned in close, her voice dripping with venom, and hissed, "This house is mine now. Hand over the keys, Florence, or I will make sure you regret it." The walls of my home, the very walls my late husband and I built brick by brick with years of sacrifice, suddenly felt like they were closing in on me. The home that held my memories, my struggles, my laughter, my tears, and the whispers of the past was now a battlefield. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked at Daniel, my only son, the boy I raised with love and devotion. But instead of defending me, his lips trembled, his eyes darting away, as though he too was shackled by the venom of the woman he had chosen to marry. I never imagined that betrayal would come in such a cruel, humiliating way, nor that it would strike inside the very place I called safe. But the slap was only the beginning. Behind it was a truth that would unravel everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family. Before I continue, let me take a moment to thank every single one of you watching right now. To my dear subscribers, thank you for always standing by me and giving me the courage to keep sharing these stories. To all the new viewers and those who keep returning but have not yet subscribed, I want you to know how much it would mean to me if you hit that subscribe button. Your support is the fuel and energy that keeps this channel alive. Do not forget to like, share, and most importantly, leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your voices matter. Now, let us get back into the story. My name is Florence. I am 62 years old, a retired school teacher living in Oklahoma. My husband passed away 10 years ago, leaving me with our only child, Daniel, who was then in his mid-20s. He was the joy of my life, the one I poured all my love and strength into. Together, we made it through those dark years of grief, holding on to each other like survivors of a storm. When Daniel brought Kathy into our lives, I welcomed her with open arms. She was young, beautiful, and full of ambition. I thought to myself, at last, Daniel has found someone who will stand by him the way his father once stood by me. I cooked for her, I shared stories of our family, and I gave her the kind of warmth my own mother-in-law once gave me. But little did I know, behind Kathy's polite smile hid a sharpness that grew sharper with each passing year. At first, it was subtle. She would make small remarks about how outdated my house was or how Daniel deserved better than living in his mother's shadow. She would insist on changing traditions at family dinners, dismissing recipes I had cooked for decades. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was simply the adjustment of a young woman carving her space. But slowly, her words grew bolder and her tone colder. Whenever I voiced my opinion, Kathy's eyes would harden, and I could feel her silently daring me to challenge her. What broke my heart the most was seeing the way she pulled Daniel further and further away from me. He stopped visiting me as often, stopped calling as much, and when he did, Kathy's voice was always in the background, sharp and commanding. It was as if she had taken not only my son's time, but his very spirit. Still, I held on to hope. I told myself that love sometimes softens the rough edges of a person. I prayed Kathy would see the value of family, the treasure of respect, and the roots that bind us together. But my prayers seemed to vanish into thin air. One evening, I overheard a conversation that shook me to my core. Daniel and Kathy were in the kitchen, unaware that I was nearby. Her voice was low but firm. Daniel, this house should already be in our name. Your mother is old. She does not need it anymore. If she refuses, we will find another way. My knees nearly buckled at her words. That house was more than wood and stone. It was my sanctuary, the legacy of my husband, the place where Daniel had taken his first steps. And now my daughter-in-law was plotting to snatch it from me. When I confronted Daniel later that night, his face turned pale. Instead of denying it, his silence told me everything. My own son, the child I carried and raised with every ounce of love in me, was being swayed to betray me. I could feel the floor beneath me shift as though my whole world was about to collapse. And it was only then that I began to see the darkness hidden behind Kathy's pretty smile, the shadow she cast over my son, and the storm that was about to tear my life apart. But nothing, absolutely nothing could have prepared me for what she would do next.
The night after the slap, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily in the darkness. My cheek was still tender from Kathy's hand, but the wound inside my chest throbbed far deeper. How had I come to this? How had my life, once full of warmth and family, turned into a battlefield where my own daughter-in-law dared to lay her hands on me? And how could my son, my Daniel, stand silent as it happened? My house felt colder that night, as though the walls themselves were whispering about the betrayal I had just faced. Each creak in the wooden floor echoed like footsteps of ghosts long gone, reminding me of the people who once filled this home with laughter. I thought of my late husband, John, and wondered what he would say if he could see how his son was being led astray. But I could not allow myself to sink into grief. Something inside me, some quiet strength that age and hardship had taught me, told me that Kathy was not finished. The slap was only a warning, a glimpse of the storm she intended to unleash. I needed to open my eyes wider, to pay attention to every shadow, every whisper, every glance that revealed her true intentions. Over the next days, I noticed things I had once brushed off as harmless. At dinner, Kathy would make sly comments about how much space I had in the house for an old lady. She laughed as she spoke, but her eyes stayed cold, unblinking, as though daring me to take offense. Daniel, my sweet boy, would fidget uncomfortably beside her. Sometimes he would try to soften her words by changing the subject, but other times he simply stayed quiet, shrinking into the shell of a man who once used to light up the entire room. I remembered the first time I had met Kathy. It was in a small diner in Tulsa. Daniel had introduced her with so much excitement, his smile wide, his voice eager. Kathy was polite then, almost shy, nodding along as I asked her about her life, her dreams, her family. She spoke of ambition, of wanting to rise above the struggles of her childhood. I admired that in her. I thought she would be a woman of strength and compassion. How wrong I was. One evening, as I washed dishes in the kitchen, I heard voices drifting from the living room. Kathy's voice was low, sharp as a blade. "You need to stop hesitating, Daniel. That house is wasted on her. She is old, she lives alone, and she will not be around forever. Why keep waiting? If she loves you as much as she says, she should be willing to hand it over without a fight." My breath caught in my throat. I pressed my wet hands against the counter, straining to hear Daniel's response. His voice was softer, torn, trembling. "Kathy, she is my mother. This is her home. I cannot just take it away from her." There was a pause, followed by a mocking laugh from Kathy. "Your problem is that you are too weak, Daniel, always hiding behind your mother. Do you want to be a man, or do you want to stay her little boy forever?" The words sliced through me like a knife. My son, caught in the middle of loyalty to me and the cruel pressure of the woman he had chosen. My heart ached for him, but it also ached for myself, for the respect I was slowly being stripped of in my own home. The following Sunday, we sat around the dining table for what should have been a peaceful family dinner. I had prepared roast chicken, Daniel's favorite since he was a boy. The aroma filled the house, rich and comforting, yet the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Kathy picked at her plate, her expression one of disdain. "She is nice, Florence," she said, her tone drenched in sarcasm, "but Daniel and I really need to start having meals in a home that feels like ours, a place where we make the rules." I glanced at Daniel, hoping he would counter her cruel remark, but his fork simply clinked against the plate as he lowered his gaze. My heart sank deeper than I could bear. Later that night, I confronted him gently, my voice trembling. "Daniel, what is happening to you? Do you not see how she speaks to me? Do you not see how she disrespects me in this very house?" His shoulders slumped and his voice cracked. "Mother, I know, but you do not understand. She wants security. She wants a future. She keeps saying this house should belong to us, that it is the only way we can move forward. I do not know how to make her stop." Tears stung my eyes. My son, my flesh and blood, was being broken down piece by piece, his will bent to her desires. The breaking point came one evening when I returned from the grocery store earlier than expected. As I placed the bags on the counter, I heard Kathy's voice from the back porch, sharper than ever. "I don't care what it takes, Daniel. That house will be ours. If she doesn't hand it over willingly, then I will make her. I have ways." Her words sent chills down my spine. The way she said it, calm, certain, like a hunter who had already cornered her prey, told me she was not bluffing. That night, I waited until Daniel was alone in the hallway. My hand shook as I touched his arm. "Daniel, I heard her. I know what she is planning. Tell me the truth. Do you want this house too?" He froze. His face paled, his lips trembled, and then, with eyes that could not meet mine, he whispered, "Mother, I do not know how to stop her." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. My son was slipping away from me, and Kathy's grip on him was stronger than I had feared. But even in my despair, I knew one thing. If Kathy thought she could break me, she was wrong. She had underestimated me. What she didn't know was that I was already preparing for her next move. The weeks that followed felt like walking on a battlefield, where every smile was a mask, and every silence was a dagger waiting to pierce me. Kathy's presence became heavier, her words sharper, and her gaze more venomous. I could feel her circling me like a predator, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Daniel became quieter, more withdrawn, a shadow of the son I had raised. I would catch him staring at me with eyes full of conflict, guilt fighting against fear. It pained me to see him so broken, but what pained me even more was the question that haunted me every night. Would he choose her over me? One evening, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea to calm my nerves, when Kathy stormed in, her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. She dropped a stack of papers onto the table with a smirk. "Here," she said coldly, "since you keep pretending this house is yours forever, you might as well know that things have changed." I frowned, my fingers trembling as I reached for the papers. My eyes scanned the top page and my heart nearly stopped. It was a legal document, one that claimed I had signed over the ownership of my house to Daniel and Kathy. My mouth grew dry. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice barely holding steady. Kathy leaned closer, her smile widening. "It is proof. You signed this months ago, Florence, or maybe you're too old to remember." I shook my head, bile rising in my throat. I never signed anything. I would never give this house away. From the corner of the room, Daniel appeared, his face pale, his hands trembling. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked trapped, like a man drowning in a river with no branch to cling to. My chest tightened as realization hit me like a storm. Kathy had gone beyond manipulation. She had forged my signature. The following days were a blur of chaos. Kathy began walking around the house as though it already belonged to her. She moved furniture, replaced my photographs with hers, and even had the audacity to invite her friends over, boasting about her new home. I remember one afternoon vividly. I had been sitting quietly in the living room, staring at a photo of my late husband on the mantelpiece. Kathy walked in, picked up the frame, and sneered. "This belongs in storage. We do not need ghosts staring at us from the walls." The rage that boiled inside me was like fire in my veins. I snatched the frame from her hands, clutching it to my chest. "Do not touch this. This is my home, and that is my husband. You will never erase him from these walls." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Kathy laughed, cruel and mocking. "Your time is up, Florence. The sooner you accept it, the easier it will be." Her words pierced me deeper than any knife. The final blow came one night when Daniel finally confessed. He sat at the edge of my bed, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. He said, "Mother, Kathy told me she forged your signature. She said no one would believe you if you fought it. She has already spoken to people about transferring the deed. I tried to stop her, but she threatened to leave me if I did not go along with it." My heart shattered into pieces. To hear those words from my son, the boy I had carried in my arms, the man I had prayed for every day, it was almost too much to bear. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "Daniel, how could you let it get this far? How could you let her take everything from us?" He buried his face in his hands, sobbing, "I was weak, Mother. I thought if I kept her calm, she would not go through with it. But she is not stopping. She wants everything." I reached out and held his trembling hands. My voice steadied, though my heart was breaking. "Listen to me, Daniel. She has crossed a line, and I will not let her destroy us. I will fight for this home, for your father's memory, and for you, even if you cannot fight for yourself." The very next morning, I awoke with a new fire in my chest. I was done being silent. Kathy thought she had cornered me, but she did not know that I had one thing she would never have: resilience. I pulled out an old leather address book from my drawer, flipping through its worn pages until I found the number I was searching for. It belonged to Richard Hayes, an old family friend and lawyer who had once handled the purchase of this very house. If anyone could expose Kathy's lies, it was him. As I dialed the number, my hands still shaking, I knew the storm was far from over. Kathy had drawn her battle lines, but she had underestimated the strength of a mother, a widow, and a woman who had nothing left to lose. And soon she would find out that the house she tried to steal was guarded not just by walls and deeds, but by a heart that refused to surrender. The next morning, the Oklahoma sun poured through my curtains, warm and golden, but my spirit felt cold and heavy. I knew I was standing at the edge of a war I had not asked for, but one I could no longer avoid. Kathy had taken everything too far. Her slap, her insults, her manipulation of my son, and now her forged papers. She wanted to erase me from my own home, but she had underestimated me. With trembling hands but a determined heart,
I picked up the phone and called Richard Hayes. Richard had been a close friend of my late husband and one of the most trusted lawyers in our county. When he answered, his voice carried the same calm authority it always had. "Florence, it has been years. What is wrong? You sound shaken." I told him everything. Every detail. From the cruel words Kathy had whispered to Daniel, to the slap that burned my cheek, to the document she had thrown on my kitchen table. There was silence on the line, followed by a slow, steady voice. "Bring the papers to me, Florence. I will look into this immediately. If what you say is true, then your daughter-in-law has committed fraud, and fraud always leaves fingerprints." I met Richard the next day in his office. The smell of old books and polished wood filled the room, bringing back memories of the day John and I had signed the deed to our house all those years ago. My hands shook as I handed him the stack of papers Kathy had presented to me. Richard adjusted his glasses, scanned the document carefully, and then looked at me with a grave expression. "Florence, your instinct was right. This signature is not yours. It has been forged, and not very well, I might add. Kathy may think she is clever, but she has left enough evidence for us to prove her lies in court." Relief washed over me like a wave, but it was bitter too. To think that my own son had been caught in the web of such deceit, to know that my family had been poisoned from the inside, it broke something deep inside of me. Richard leaned forward, his voice steady. "You have two choices. We can quietly expose her and demand she step back, or we can take this to court and let the law strip her down completely." I stared at the floor, my chest tightening. Quietly exposing her might have been easier, but after everything Kathy had done, the disrespect, the threats, the humiliation of my son, I knew silence was no longer an option. "No," I whispered, my voice hardening. "She has tried to destroy me in my own home. She has broken my son, mocked my husband's memory, and nearly taken everything I have built. She must be exposed, Richard. All of it." He nodded. "Then that is exactly what we will do." The confrontation came faster than I expected. Richard arranged a family meeting in my living room, insisting that both Daniel and Kathy be present. I will never forget the look on Kathy's face when she saw him sitting there, briefcase by his side, eyes sharp as steel. "What is this?" she scoffed, folding her arms. "Another one of Florence's desperate games?" Richard's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Kathy, I have reviewed the documents you presented as proof of Florence signing over her house. They are forgeries, sloppy ones at that. You have committed fraud, and if Florence chooses, you could face criminal charges." Kathy's smirk faltered, but she quickly recovered, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "That is ridiculous. Daniel, tell them. You saw the papers. You know she signed them." All eyes turned to Daniel. He sat stiffly on the sofa, his face pale and damp with sweat, his hands twisted in his lap, as though he was wrestling with invisible chains. "Daniel," I said softly, my voice breaking, "look at me. I am your mother. You know I would never give this house away. You know the truth." His eyes finally met mine, and for the first time in months I saw the boy I once raised staring back at me. The boy who used to run across this living room with toy cars, who used to hug me tightly when he was afraid of thunderstorms. His lips trembled as he whispered, "I know, Mother. I know she forged it. I tried to stop her, but I was afraid of losing her." The silence that followed was deafening. Kathy's face twisted in fury as she realized her mask had finally cracked. "You coward!" she spat at Daniel. "You would betray me for her after everything I have given you?" Richard stood, his voice firm. "Kathy, this is over. Florence will keep her house, and if you attempt anything further, you will answer to the law." Kathy's eyes burned into me, her rage uncontained. "This is not over, Florence. You may have won today, but you will regret crossing me." She stormed out of the house, the door slamming so hard the walls rattled. Daniel collapsed into sobs, burying his face in his hands. I moved to his side, holding him close as tears slipped down my own cheeks. "My son, you let her chain you, but chains can be broken. You must find yourself again." He wept in my arms like the little boy he once was, and for the first time I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps our bond could heal, though the scars would never fade. As I sit here now in the quiet of my home, I look around at the walls that still stand, the photos that still hang, the memories that remain untouched. Kathy tried to take everything from me, but she failed. I learned that betrayal can come from within, and that love does not excuse cruelty. I learned that even when those we love hurt us the most, we must stand firm in who we are. And above all, I learned that resilience is the greatest weapon a woman can wield. This house is not just wood and stone. It is my life, my history, my truth. And it will remain mine until the day I draw my last breath. Thank you, my dear viewers, for staying with me through this painful story. I hope it touched your heart and reminded you of the strength we carry inside us, even in the face of betrayal. Please share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your voices. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who may need encouragement, and subscribe to this channel. Your support keeps me going, and I can't wait to share more stories with you.